We're honored today to have time with Dennis Swanson, a true media icon with over 50 years in the broadcasting industry. An incredible experience, an incredible set of experiences where Dennis has truly defined broadcasting in so very many ways. Welcome, Dennis. We're pleased to have you with us today. Dennis, tell us, when did you catch the bug of becoming a broadcaster?
In high school.
In high school?
Yeah, I was a kid, was in the early 50s, and we got a television set like when I was in high school. And I was fascinated by it. And I thought, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So that's what I wanted to do. The problem is I had to go to college, and we didn't have money for me to go to college. So I won a competition, and I won an engineering scholarship. So I actually went to the University of Illinois, which was 70 miles away. I could hitchhike, on an engineering scholarship. And I was in chemical engineering for 2.5 years, and I hated it. I just couldn't do it any longer. So I switched to the College of Communications, and I called the scholarship people. I said, you don't have to pay me anymore. I've given up engineering and gone to, because I'm going to do television.
Yeah.
And they said, well, your grades are okay, and we know you need the money. And so they continued to fund me, which was great.
Well, that's fantastic. And then upon graduation from college, you...
Upon graduation, I went into the Marine Corps. I was commissioned as a lieutenant and served in the Marine Corps. I was in the 1st Marine Division, and then went through the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then was lucky that my time was up, so I missed Vietnam. And some of my friends didn't and paid the ultimate price, unfortunately. But then I went back to Illinois and got my master's degree in the College of Communications.
And your first job coming out?
First job was actually for the U of I TV station in educational television. But my first commercial job was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with a radio television powerhouse station there. I was there for 16 months. It was a great experience. And then I moved on to Chicago. I worked for WGN there. And that was in 1966. And from then till now, I've worked in either Chicago, Los Angeles, or New York.
Amazing, amazing. And so you knew it was broadcasting at a very early age.
Yep.
You became very targeted. You know it was television.
Yep.
And you really grew with the industry. The golden age of television.
I've been fortunate to be around for a lot of the technological advances that have come, and it's amazing to me the things that we can do now as opposed to what we cut our teeth on, back in the 60s.
Now, as you think about your experiences, you have so many incredible accomplishments. Maybe we could start with Oprah Winfrey. How did you discover her, or how did she discover you in Chicago at WLS, and how did you summon the courage to put her on the air on her own television show?
The decision sort of got dumped in my lap. The first day I was the general manager there in August of '83, the fellow that was doing our morning show came in to see me early and said, I need a favor. I got to get out of my contract. And I said, well, why don't you go do the AM show, and I got to find the men's room, and then we'll talk after the show. So I went down to research. I said, how are we doing in the morning? It's my first day here. They said, we're in last place. We're getting killed. So the kid comes back. I said, you know what? It's your lucky day. I got promoted. I'm all excited. I'm going to let you out of your contract. So now we have an opportunity. And we were up against Phil Donahue in his home market. And he was very successful. He was easily winning the time period in Chicago, as well as what he was doing nationwide. And so I said to the management group there that worked for me, I said, look, you've always tried to find another Donahue. I said, why don't we look for an alternative? Why don't we see if there isn't a woman that might be different and offer an alternative to the audience? So I said, focus on women as well as men this time. That afternoon, a young woman who literally started the week before me came down with a tape, and she said, look, I just joined the station. I worked in Baltimore. This is a woman I worked with. Her name's Oprah Winfrey. This tape won't show you how good she is, but you should consider her. So we go through the process, and then I was still intrigued by the Oprah Winfrey thing. So we brought her in on Labor Day weekend of 1983 to do a full hour show audition. And I said, make it a tough show. And the program department did. I sat there on that Saturday morning, and watched this hour unfold, and I thought, holy smokes, I just got the answer. And so because it was a holiday weekend, everybody was grumbling that the new guy was brutal. They all went off as soon as the taping was over. She and I sat there for a couple hours and visited. And she wanted to know if I had any concern. She desperately wanted to do this show. And she wanted to do it alone. And I said, well, we're not making budget, so if I can hire one rather than two, that'll be good. She said, you know I'm black. I said, yeah, I can figure that out. And she said, I'm overweight. I said, so am I, it's okay. I said, a little vulnerability probably will make you acceptable, more acceptable in some communities where it might be an issue. But I said, now that I think about it, I do have a concern. I said, I've seen people push their success right up their nose. She said, do you really think I could be that successful? I said, this is going to cost me money. You're going to shoot the lights out.
Wow.
And her attorney was very powerful in Baltimore, Ron Shapiro. He represented a lot of the Orioles, Brooks Robinson and people like that. And I called him, I said, I want to do a deal, but you got to get her out by December 31st, because that was still 4 months. And she still had a couple of months. They had an option for a couple of months, and I didn't want to wait that long. He got her out. We started her January 1, 1984. Was an immediate success, went to #1 in the time period, and then ultimately into syndication and #1 nationwide.
Incredible. You must stay in contact with her all the time now.
Yeah,
I
we're
imagine.
in contact once in a while. She has her life to lead, and I
Yes.
have mine. She's always been gracious and given me the credit for having the courage to put her on the air. I think we're all products of our environment, and I've been at the University of Illinois, and we had Manny Jackson was our basketball captain in the 50s. I think the first Division I school to do that. And when you're in the Marine Corps, you don't really care about the ethnicity or the race of the person next to you. You just want to know, if we get to combat, will this guy be okay?
We'll be together.
And so
Sure.
I sort of evaluated people on that. I thought she was going to be huge, a winner.
Well, you
And,
certainly you picked a winner.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
That one
Dennis.
worked out good.
Now, a few years earlier, on the hard news side of things, when you were at KABC TV in Los Angeles, you did an investigation as it related to the LA Police Department that led to the Peabody Award. So how did that come to pass for you?
Well, new eyes. We had a city news service, and I go in there as the executive producer. Ultimately, a year later, became the news director. But I'm going through the city news service, and every so often, so-and-so was killed last night by the Los Angeles Police Department, and a few details. And it occurred to me that a lot of these people had minority names, and we checked, and they were minorities. They were all unarmed. And so I had a brilliant reporter. His name was Wayne Satz. He was an attorney. And I said, Wayne, let's get on this. I said, let's find out what the LAPD is doing. Well, what it turns out, it went on for 3 years, this story. And what it turned out was, it wound up in a grand jury investigation. Right. And they ultimately changed the shooting policy of the Los Angeles Police Department. And we didn't enter for the Peabody. The form of the grand jury actually took all our tapes and our story, sent it to Athens, Georgia, and said, these two guys are as brave as anybody I know in Southern California. They should get an honor. And so they honored us. But I think the relevance of the story was that when we started that story, about in the high 20s, close to 30 people shot and killed by the LAPD, then after our stories and the change in the shooting policy, it was about half that the next year.
Wow. So you truly saved lives.
Well, I think what we did is we put a spotlight on. There were no autopsies, there was no coroner's investigation there was no district attorney involved, and so what we did was we created an arrangement where there was some accountability called for.
Your professional accomplishments are equaled by the many, many not-for-profit and charitable activities you've engaged with through your career. When did you determine that having that balance would be important in your life and how you lead?
I think when I ran WLS, I think a television station that does a good job in news but really serves its community and reaches out to its community. If you can get that combination going, you're usually going to be pretty close to the top of the heap. And we did a lot of that community outreach at WLS. And then when I went on to New York, we did the same thing at WNBC. And I personally made it a commitment. You know, you learn in the Marine Corps, you lead by example. And so we had relationships with a lot of the various local community groups. And it I think, really helped to propel us to a leadership position.
Yeah. ABC. Many, many years of your time in this industry have been spent at ABC and its various affiliates, as well as at the network. During your tenure at ABC, there was a very special event that took place as it related to the International Olympics Committee and changing the way Olympics were really held around the world. How did this come about?
When Cap Cities buys ABC, Roone Arledge ran both news and sports. And Cap Cities really wanted Roone only to run the news, and they wanted somebody else to run the sports. And so I was running the stations division. Well, they're a stations company. They wanted their own people to run the stations company. So they put me in charge of sports. So I come in there in '86, and we're now in preparation for the Olympics. And Roone was going to be the executive producer of the Olympics, but I was responsible for everything administratively and the budget and so on and so forth. So I figured the first thing I better do is meet the head of the IOC, Juan Antonio Samaranch. So I had to go to the British Open that summer, so we made a side trip to Lausanne, Switzerland, where the IOC is headquartered. I meet with him for about an hour. I had the guy from the Paris Bureau of ABC Sports with me, who had all the connections and set it up. And it was late in the afternoon. We had about 10 minutes left on our appointment time. And I said to him, I said, because we'd cleaned up our business. I was really concerned with the hockey schedule for the Calgary, because I knew the United States wasn't very good, and I wanted to play 2 weak teams first and save the tough games for latter, so that we didn't start out 0-2 and lose our audience. And we talked about that. We talked about the interval for the ski, and then I brought up the fact. I said, you're doing 2 Olympics in 1 year is a tough deal for a network. You got these 2 big gorillas and a lot of commitment of resources and money. It would make sense to split them, and then you have one every 2 years. And for a marketing for big corporations, that would make more sense, and you'd probably get more money from the networks that way. He took the idea under consideration. We get in the car, and the Paris guy rips me to shreds. He says, your first meeting, you're giving this, you're insulting this guy. I said, no, I didn't insult him. I just had a suggestion. I get back to New York. About 6 weeks later, the phone rings. My assistant says, it's Juan Antonio Samaranch. I pick up the phone. He says, Swanson. He says, it's done. And I think he means the hockey schedule. I said, well, that's great. Who do we play first? He said, no. He says, we've moved the Winter Olympics. He said, they'll be in '94 in Lillehammer. I said, wow.
Incredible.
He said, are you surprised I could do that? I said, no. I said, I know you're pretty powerful. You can get the votes you need. I said, no. I said, that's great. I think you made a wise decision. But what about the hockey? In the end run.
How did that turn out?
In the end run, we got the hockey schedule we wanted.
Oh, that's great. Roone Arledge, another incredible icon in television history. How was he to work for?
Well, I actually never worked for him. We were division heads. Brandon Stoddard was the head of entertainment, who won many awards. Roots and Rich Man, Poor Man. Arledge, who created ABC Sports and won a zillion awards, and he was news, and I was sports. And
so
we
you
all
were
worked.
peers.
Yeah, we all worked together. It was a lot of fun, and the network did well in those years.
Now, ABC Monday Night Football also had a renaissance during your leadership. If I recall, Al Michaels and Frank Gifford, I believe, were the primary broadcasters during
Yeah,
your time there?
when I took over sports, it was Frank Gifford and O.J. Simpson and Joe Namath. And I just didn't think it was a very effective combination. And to me, Al Michaels is the best play-by-play guy in the business. And here he was
Still
under
is.
contract us.
Yeah.
And so we put Al Michaels in as play-by-play. Gifford, and then I hired Dan Deerdorf, real smart guy from University of Michigan, well educated, and we created that combination, letting OJ and Namath go, and we changed producers and directors, and we put a fellow named Craig Janoff in, and that's where you got those tight shots of the faces and everything. And then they brought me 3 pieces of music because I wanted a theme. And the first one I didn't like. The second one was Hank Williams Jr. and All My Rowdy Friends. And I loved that song and that music. And we turned that into a Monday Night Party. And won a lot of Emmys with it. And it created sort of a signature for the product at the time. And I couldn't tell you what the third song was because I didn't want to hear it. I liked.
You knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted. And you know, it all sort of came together. And we worked well with the league and got a great schedule, and we got Monday Night Football to, you know, it was in 5th place all network programs for what, 5-6 years in a row. It was great.
Tremendous run, indeed. Now, after 10 years at ABC Sports, you made the leap to NBC, specifically to WNBC in New York.
Well, what happened was Disney bought ABC, and what they wanted to do was merge ESPN and ABC Sports. And there's no ABC Sports anymore. And I was the roadblock, and so they merged the two, and so I moved on in life and got together with Bob Wright, and he hired me and to run WNBC, and then Jack Welch and Dick Ebersol added co-chair of the Olympics to the resume, and I had a great 6 years. It was a lot of fun.
And you transformed WNBC from being kind of number 2 in New York to being the clear number 1. What was the secret formula?
The secret formula was basically, Ken, the same thing we did at WLS, which was, you know, get our news department to be better than the other guy's news department, and then to do the community outreach. And we did so many community events. I mean, we added the Puerto Rican Day Parade, we added the St. Patrick's Day Parade, we added the Columbus Day Parade, we added the fireworks on July 4th, the Macy's. You know, we added, and then we already had the Thanksgiving parade that the network did. We took the Christmas tree lighting from this little tape thing and made it into a live 2-hour show that the network ultimately picked up. And all of a sudden, you know, we had, and then we got the New York City Marathon, and we virtually had a critical New York event every month in our schedule, and then with our community outreach to a lot of the different ethnic communities. I had to laugh because George Pataki was governor then, and he said to me one day, he says, "Dennis, I see you at all the same events that I'm at." I said, "Governor, we're after the same thing that starts with V. You're after voters, I'm after viewers."
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, local news had a role as well, did it not?
Yes,
in the improvement at WNBC?
Yeah, absolutely. And we were fortunate that, you know, we had Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons. Sue was a New York person. Chuck we got from Boston. He had been here and had come down to New York. And they were a great anchor combination, and we were able to ride that combination you know, to leadership in news in New York.
Now, you've worked in ABC and affiliates, you've worked with NBC affiliates, you've worked now currently at Fox.
Right.
And if I recall, you had a small sojourn with CBS
Yeah, I
along
was
the
over
way
there
as
for
well.
3 years as chief operating officer.
If you were to compare the enterprises, are they different culturally,
Oh,
or are
there's
they
no
very
question.
similar?
There's no question. ABC is really a station company. You know, it was created by Leonard Goldenson and had a station real philosophy about it. And it was the stations that kept the payroll going. And so much more clout from them. And then of course when Cap Cities came in, they were a station company. So you had that in the fabric. NBC and CBS are network companies. And you know, they were the first 2 networks, solid, you know, number 1s in prime and daytime, Today shows, Tonight shows, network companies. And the stations were sort of, I don't want to say an afterthought to them, but they didn't push the stations as much as an ABC would have. Fox, I would say, is sort of both. We only get 2 hours a day, from our network. You know, we're responsible for the other 22. The stations have been a great cash cow for Rupert over the years, or Mr. Murdoch over the years. And so, but, you know, the network, he created a fourth network. So, you know, we're sort of a combination of the two. But yes, there's a totally different culture out of the four companies.
Dennis, you've seen so much change and led so much change in the industry during your career. As we look to the future, it appears that there are some clouds on the horizon, at least a number of uncertainties, as the digital technology revolution takes hold. What do you see as the future for local television as we look ahead?
We better be nimble. You know, we have two challenges now. The first challenge is economic, because we're all impacted by the downturn. And it happened in '08, and you know, we didn't get a bailout from the government. And so, you know, we had to create our own bailout. And we changed a lot of how we did our business, because we can't sit around and wring our hands. But, you know, this is, you know, we're into our 5th year now of a bad economy. I mean, that's the longest run since the Depression, and it's certainly the longest run that any of us that have to deal with this. And you know, you got to hope that sooner or later there's some light at the end of the tunnel. That's the first challenge we have. The second challenge we have is technology. And you know, I keep telling our people, I go around the country, keep telling our people, you cannot do news the same way we've always done it, because of the mobile devices. And I can sit at a theater on Broadway in New York, and during intermission, I get all the news and sports and weather information I need. So by the time I get home at night, I don't need to watch a late news. You got to make it compelling for me to watch. You can't do the same old, same old. And so that's a challenge we have. Yeah. And not only then, but you know, now, you know, you see that when people wake up in the morning, they used to just turn on their television. You know, now they go to their cell phone or their mobile device or their computer. And so these are technological things that are going on. They're great inventions. They're great for the consumer, but it changes our business and how we go about it.
A number of stations have recently introduced their own applications, their own apps on iPhone and the Android system, in a way as a replication of what happens on the television screen, if you will. Do you foresee this integration taking place on an aggressive way?
Well, I think the answer is, you know, we have some apps and we see some nice use with some of the apps, but to me, we got to have a 3-screen strategy. And you know, we have the over-the-air screen. We've tried to integrate the computer screen into that. And now we better have our product on a mobile screen. And that's what we have saved our spectrum for, is for mobile. And we've tested it, and we've worked with some of the manufacturers. And we think that there's a real, you know, with the phones and the tablets and everything, we think there's a huge business there. Now, whether it's a subscription business or whether it's a advertising supported business, you know, Americans love convenience and they'll pay for it in some fashion. And you know, we need to put our product so that when you go for a boat ride, when you go in a car, wherever you go, you can get our product. And that, I think, is, and then we use the one screen to drive people to the other screen. And I think that if we think along those lines and we pursue this mobile vigorously, and we can hold on to our spectrum, because there is issues with Washington on that. And I think we'll be okay. I do think some people might fall out. I don't think there may be, well, you see a lot of broadcasting companies, I mean, some broadcasting companies are in bankruptcy. And so, you know, does the world, you know, God played a trick on the technology people. They can create all this ability to put 500 channels or 700 channels together. God only gave human beings one set of eyes and 24 hours in the day. So there's only so much you can consume.
Yeah, sure.
And there may be right now more than the consumer can take care of.
And certainly with the notion of moving from video as scheduled, if you will, to video on demand, where it's
Yes.
really a market of one these days instead of a market of 18 to 29-year-olds and what have you.
Yes.
Do you see this notion of video on demand being okay as it relates to being a local television station? Is it okay that viewers can watch it at their own time frame, or does that impact your economic model dramatically?
Well, what it means is that when we have set time periods for news, for example, the public may not necessarily wait for those time periods to get their news, and the older viewer who's used to the way things have been is being replaced now by younger people who are mobile device and cell phones and social media, and they don't use television the way our generation would.
And the role of cable television?
Well, cable's
they're under threat too. I believe.
Well, yeah, but we've had cable as a threat for a long time. Right now, cable's got issues. I think some of the major cable companies have lost subscribers. They're not gaining. They're so they have their own issues to go over, because particularly at a down economic time, do people want to pay $150 a month, to get a cable service with the packages? You can watch an awful lot of television on a computer screen, and so these are all things that are going to change how all of us that are in the media do our business. And you better have the ability to think a little bit out of the box, and don't be afraid to try new things, new ideas, because if you don't, you might wind up like BlackBerry.
Yes, watch them. Yes,
and look how quick it happened.
Yeah.
Oh my
Amazing.
goodness. Yes.
Took Eastman Kodak 130 years. It took RIM about 15.
Right.
Dennis, 51 wonderful years in this industry. The favorite role you've had in your extraordinary career, if you had to pick one, what would it have been?
I think running a television station is the most fun job there is. And that's what I picked when I left ABC Sports and I went back to local television. Doesn't quite have the glamour that a network head has, but that is a fun job, because what you have is the ability to program television to your community. And here's where, if you're fulfilling your license requirement and you are using your television resource to the good of the community, which you're supposed to do, you can do an awful lot of good in helping people, bringing people together, and using television for what hopefully is the best use of it. And so that would be my favorite job. It was in Chicago, was in New York.
And if we had to limit ourselves to a small handful of remarkable people, you've worked on, no doubt, with many, countless remarkable people. Are there one or two that stand out for you as having been just above all the rest?
Well, it was great to work with Jim McKay. And he was such a great writer, and he had such a way with the word. It was great to work with Al Michaels, who is a perfectionist, was always prepared, never made a mistake. It was great to work with a behind-the-scenes person, Dennis Lewin at ABC Sports, who'd been all over the world for Arledge for 30 years, and was the executive producer of Wide World of Sports. And I made him the head of our production when I was at ABC Sports, and he was just great to work with.
It's amazing. Wonderful people, working with wonderful people, get wonderful things done, accomplish great things. Final question for you this afternoon. As we engage with our students, the next generations of leaders, there are any number of students today that are contemplating entering the world of media. Many think of sports management, many think of broadcasting in the broadest sense of the word, as we've talked previously. What would your advice be for this next generation of leaders that will be soon graduating from college?
Well, I think if I had one piece of advice to give to the young, it would be to follow your dream. If you want to be in the media business, then get in the media business. No, and it may be difficult to find a job now because we're not creating as many jobs now as we used to. It's a more mature business. But, you know, follow your dream. You know, it's what I did. You know, yeah, I could have been an engineer, I guess, but, you know, I wanted to be in television. And then it comes down to you got to work hard. Nobody's ever going to give you anything easy. And you got to show up in any profession that you pick. I don't care what it is, in your business, in sports, in any business. You're competing against so many talented people, and you better work hard, and you better use what God gave you to the utmost, and then hope that you are clever enough to wind up with some good bosses along the way that will support you.
Pursue your dream and have a tremendous work ethic. Wonderful advice from Dennis Swanson, President of Station Operations for Fox Television. Dennis, it's been a delight speaking with you today. Thank you so very much for engaging with us.
Thank you.